Hi, I'm Robert Flowers. I'm the writer, director, one of the writers and the director of Honors Half-Life here at HorrOrigins Film Festival. Out of Los Angeles, I write liminal characters that populate hostile worlds. So I'm very pleased to be here at this festival. It's been a good time seeing my work on the big screen and seeing so many talented filmmakers and their work as well. So, yeah.
Robert, thanks for sitting down with me today. I really enjoyed watching your short, and let's talk a little bit about the germination of that idea and how that all came about.
Great question. One of the first things that happened was I came across this documentary on soldiers. It's called about atomic veterans who had been subjected to testing for a while, for a long time, from like 1948 to like the early 90s, I believe. It was made by this Danish filmmaker, and they were subjected to some brutal tests with nuclear weapons, and they were sworn to secrecy by penalty of death. And so that was kind of the seed, the nugget that took hold. And then wanting to do a horror movie or lean into the horror genre for the first time, my co-writer Mercedes May and I kind of ruminated over the idea and how that trauma, how that experience with these soldiers, these vets who were doing their duty, how that would manifest inside them, and one of them having to take ownership of it and lead his group that was subjected the same way as he was, and kind of take care of them, but ultimately have to make the world that they live in safer because of the monsters they would become from the punishment they were subjected to in those tests. So that was like the big starting point, and then creating the familial relationship with the daughter character Grace. Being able to pull out some of the humanity that our character would still have at the beginning of the film. So that's kind of how it all started.
Interesting concept, but how did it emotionally connect with your earlier life experience?
Well, my father is a Vietnam vet. He fought in the war, saw combat, was wounded there, and it very much affected his life. And I grew up with him, obviously, my whole life, and so I experienced the aftermath of him dealing with the effects of that war. And he never ever admitted that he had PTSD. In fact, he would go so far as to say he didn't believe it existed. And my mother and I always, nowadays we talk about mental health a lot more openly, but growing up, when I did in the 90s, it's not something that you would discuss and be so vulnerable about it. And my father is a man of his generation. He would never discuss this. I heard maybe a handful of stories of his time in combat, and they were very brutal. And I can't even imagine what a young man would go through when he was 21, 22, seeing what he saw. And so that had always resonated with me, and I have a very soft spot for those who served because of him. And so that was the angle of the story I wanted to tell. And that's why at the end of the film, in the credits, I say "for Dad." So even though it's not a direct one-to-one story, he was who I had in mind thinking about that character, and even the other character who we see in the film.
So let's go back further now. Let's find out when you first found yourself really connecting with film, what films you connected with early on, what started to inspire you to move in the direction of being involved in film production and writing and film direction?
Oh, great question. Some early Oliver Stone movies, which I would watch with my father, Platoon, Wall Street. JFK was a big one for me, just how expressionistic that film was. Robert Richardson's lighting in that, I didn't know you could do such things, and it was had a huge impact. I would try to mimic him in school photography projects when I was an undergrad.
And the mixing of media formats,
yes,
that was brilliant as well.
Exactly. I loved the 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and then recreation of them in black and white and color. I just love that style, that audacity to make a film like that. Sergio Leone's Man with No Name trilogy. Good, Bad, the Ugly specifically, huge impact. just how epic he would make the photography and his storytelling, and let the moments breathe, and the story was written all over the characters' faces, and it was just such an epic tale, and I watch it all the time.
And the brilliant use of the Ennio Morricone score.
Oh my goodness! And that, I mean, people talk about it all the time, but that finale scene, the three of them, the one-liners, there are two kinds of men on this world: those guns and those who dig. And the score at the end is such a chef's kiss. So I would revisit that all the time. And then it's not even limited to that. Like, obviously I like even more pop culture movies like Indiana Jones. I mean, The Last Crusade, and maybe that's because that's very much a father-son story too. So you could probably say there's a link somewhere in there. But it's a great adventure story, and the dynamic between the two is super compelling.
Did you and your dad watch films together at all?
All the time as a kid. So from the time bringing it back to horror, I watched Nightmare on Elm Street as a very young kid. My dad did not censor me. I had a lot of nightmares about Freddy Krueger in my childhood. The Thing really hit me hard. Even some goofy shit like Gremlins terrified me as a kid. Joe Dante's Gremlins. So, but we would go to the video rental store, and we would rent like 8 movies, and then over the summer we'd watch them all. We'd even dub them and like share them with friends and stuff. But yeah. Because I grew up in the 80s, and so that's just the thing we did. And we would go to the drive-in. I saw Back to the Future in the theater with him. I saw Rocky IV in the theater with him. So like those big movies.
Where were you at that time in the 80s?
I was in Phoenix, so that's where I'm from, Phoenix, Arizona. So the heat, not unlike Tucson here. So
kind of like the suburbs of Phoenix that Spielberg experienced.
Yes, and I learned that later in life that he was making his Super 8 stuff in the valley there as well, which I thought was super cool and everything. And I believe that the film is called Firefly. I heard about that. I mean, back then we didn't have the internet as much, at all compared to what now. So the information wasn't there, but it was like the stuff of legend. So yeah, that was a cool thing.
So you were starting to get the film bug, definitely early on. And what leaned you towards a career, and what jobs were you pursuing in between that either helped that along or kind of delayed it?
Well, interesting enough, it didn't. I just loved movies so much, and me and my friends loved movies so much as a kid. We would go around and just speak in movie quotes. That would be our conversation. We'd be 13, 14, and then if we didn't know the quote, what was that from? Oh, that's from this. Oh, that's from this movie, and that's from Stand By Me or whatever. That's from True Romance, that sort of thing. But I didn't ever think of it as a career. That was just some cool, magical thing that you could experience. Didn't know how movies were made, and I just knew that was the cool thing. Like, I was purely an audience, like just love of the cinema and going to the movies with your friends, my dad, want to go on a movie on a date and everything. And then I went to school overseas my second or third year in university, my undergrad. Based on a recommendation from a friend. She had gone to the Netherlands for school, and so she's like, you should go. I did it, and it was part of an international communications program. And one of the things we got to do was make a commercial. They gave us film equipment, we had the editing software, and they sent us out, and we got to make it and show it in class. And I was like, holy crap. And I had no idea how to make anything. And so it was my first experience picking up a camera with the intent to make something and tell something with it in the visual medium. And I just fell in love with it. This is cool. Like, can you do this? I had questions about that, and they're like, yeah, this is the movies you watch. There's hundreds of technicians and people behind the scenes that make it happen, that bring it to life. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, you know what, I want to try that. I want to do that. And so I came back stateside. I changed my major, which was dumb, and I made it more leaning toward kind of a film thing, like communications and visual storytelling stuff. And I made the choice to apply to film school. And this is 20 years ago, so again, the education and stuff, that information that's readily available now, like on YouTube and all those resources, wasn't around then. And so this is like, oh, this is a cool avenue to go to. And then getting to school and then just living, breathing, and eating movies and making movies every day for a couple years with 20 of your classmates who have the same passion and love of movies as you do. I mean, that was a dream. That was an awesome experience, and led me to here.
So why did you say changing your major was dumb?
Because I could have graduated sooner. So I wanted to add some credits, and so that's what I did.
Okay, so now you've gone to school, you've gotten a taste of filmmaking in the Netherlands, which must have been awesome.
Yes.
And so you're back in Phoenix?
No, I stayed in Los Angeles right after school.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were on to the film career then.
Exactly.
So tell me about your first entry-level jobs that you started doing.
I had a couple. So I would shoot corporate video all over the world, all over the country in operating rooms. So heart surgery, so blood and guts, people cracking sternums open, heart procedures. So as close as you are to me with the camera, I was that close to a beating heart on the table, and so with real blood and doctors all around me. So that was a job I've had for a while. I started out as a set electrician, so I was lighting sets on indie movies, music videos.
Were you like best boy?
I was just a juicer, as they would call it.
Okay.
And these were heavy HMI lights, run power to generators. It was backbreaking work, but it was very cool. I got to learn lighting, work with DPs, and like see how the nuts and bolts was to create an image.
That's so crucial. So tell me about the 3 or 4 lessons that you learned about lighting and cinematography that have really stuck with you and helped you in crafting your short here.
One major lesson: it takes time, and you need the time and the people to do it. It's not about the gear; it's about the knowledge. There's physics involved. The inverse square law, like how close the light is to a subject affects its quality of light. Like you see those lovely close-ups. It's a soft source doing that, not like a light just blasting them. So knowing where to put the light, also not being afraid of the shadows. Like you don't have to light the world. You just have to light what you need to see and express the moment that you're trying to express using light and shadow. So that stuff was super informative and very, very much harken back to watching JFK as a kid and being inspired by Robert Richardson's cinematography and that, which is just, again, amazing. And so I, being on set and working with those tools, I got to see how people even way more experienced than me worked those things and just knew how to do it, on the spot.
Do you have 2 or 3 cinematographers that are among your favorites that come to mind that maybe share a quality of each that you draw inspiration from?
I mean, Janusz Kaminski, Spielberg's DP. I mean, like a movie like Munich, Schindler's List, obviously. It's not even just the lighting. I mean, the camera work that he and Spielberg do is amazing.
The little girl in red.
Oh yes, and like little touches like that. So Roger Deakins, of course, Chivo. Children of Men is one of my favorite movies of all time. Alfonso Cuarón is one of my favorite filmmakers, and that movie is the storytelling in that and the bleakness of that and what information, how they tell a story with the full frame is masterclass. And so those are just a couple.
Were you mentioning to me last night that you've been influenced by Children of Men?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that and where that's going for maybe one of your future projects?
Yes, Children of Men, one of my favorites. Just that world and how they work in the world. And it's a unique place and time. And there's no spoon feeding. The exposition is so subliminal and in the frames, in the shots. I mean, just how we get into the world is a nice entry point, because it juxtaposes Clive Owen's character at the beginning when he's going into that coffee shop. He is not paying attention to the newscast that everyone else is. And so like just little nods like that, the graffiti in the background on the wall when Clive Owen's like on a bus or on a tram, all the little elements that are telling the story, not to mention the color palette is just, that's a thing I gravitate toward. And that type of world and that grittiness and that story and that character Like he's not involved. His mind isn't involved in what everyone is talking about. Like when Baby Diego's dead, and the law, like he's into himself and he's not dealing with that. He and Michael Caine are, they're doing their thing. And so that was a very heavy influence for me for one of my projects that was coming up, character-wise, and just the world itself and how you get into that world and make it dramatic without bogging down your audience with like the ins and outs and the specifics of it. And, so very much a favorite and a driving force for me creatively.
So let's go back to Honor's Half-Life, and so you've developed the screenplay, and it's COVID period, and you're ruminating about still doing something and getting out there.
Yes.
Now it's post-COVID, and you've made some connections with people but you don't really know them too well.
Right.
So take it from there.
Right. So during COVID, around 2021, there was, we were on lockdown. You couldn't do much. Obviously, the world was shut down. There was a social media app that a bunch of me and a bunch of filmmakers from all over the world were connecting on. It was like a chat room with audio. Like we could just talk, like you and me. And I met several filmmakers on the indie side. Gavin Michael Booth, who's done a bunch of cool movies. One of them is called Scare House, Last Call, and Mercy's May out of Minnesota. And we would be chatting and talking about movies. Like, it all starts with a conversation. Like, and then it ends up with like, what are you into? I'm into this. I'm into that. Then what gear do you have? What are you shooting here? I'm doing a music video with this camera. Well, I have this thing. You guys heard about this idea or this movie? And that went on for about several months, and those conversations turned into conversations about actually making something. And it's like, we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully opening up, and getting out of our living quarters, and like the idea of just, all right, now it's time to make some stuff. Can we go make some stuff? And one of the offers was to come to Canada, like, we'll run of the town, be able to get some locations, no one will bother us. And maybe it was just me wanting to get out. I was like, hell yeah, let's do that. And again, this was just the filmmaking brotherhood of people wanting to make stuff and coming together to do it. And I went up north and we shot in October of 2022. And I didn't know anybody.
Did you have any misgivings about doing it, not knowing the crew that you were assembling with?
I think my enthusiasm goes a long way in this. Like when I mentioned before, there's a will to do it that I think comes in handy. And my only misgiving was probably on the ride there, where it dawned on me that I didn't know any of these people. I mean, they could have just murdered me and left me for dead in the Detroit River. So that did not happen. But at the time, you start to think a little objectively and not just have wild enthusiasm, because that's where filmmaking usually starts. Wild enthusiasm, how I'm going to put this story together on screen and make it, And so that was a prevailing force, and so I didn't let those other thoughts get to me at all. Then when we landed, it was just go time, and it couldn't have been better. Working with everyone. The thing that sucked was the weather. The weather was highly uncooperative, but it's Canada in October, and they should have, I should have been known better. And I was warned by somebody, and again, that can-do attitude. I will not be denied. We're going to make this thing. That stubbornness I think that most filmmakers, especially at the indie level, possess was in full force.
So you shot in southwestern Ontario, right?
Yes, across the Detroit River in the town of Windsor.
All right, so you principally shot outside Windsor. So take me day by day through, what was it, a 4-day shoot?
Yes, it was. It should have been a 3-day, but I think 4-day was like, okay, we're doing some tough stuff. And also things I had never done before. I hadn't worked doing any type of stunt or any squibs, and plus I was blowing a head up, and so we had our practical effects. We had the latex for one of our characters. This is all new to me, and Mitch and Sebastian up there, the local guys who did the practical effects, they were on it. They were so into it, and that stuff doesn't cooperate with rain either. So and the temperature changes as well, and it was just wet, but like but the weather, because it was autumn, was great. The leaves are turning color. You see in the film that there's got this yellowish hue to it, and that was great. So, yeah.
Okay, so day one, what was day one like?
Day one, we fell behind schedule right away, I think, because there was a wardrobe issue, so they had to go back, so we were behind, and then we had to play catch up, and then we're like, well, we better get as much as we can, and so we actually made our day and got more on day one, just because my AD Gavin, who's also the producer on it too, kind of pushed us to do that, and it was, first days are hard, and, especially when you don't know the crew, and me, I'm like, I don't know anybody, don't know working stylists yet, and also let's be honest, there is a little bit of nerves going on too. So couple that with mishaps, a wardrobe malfunction or the dialogue not being captured, right? Because we are outside and it is cold and any little thing, and that's the thing with production. There are all the little things that can kind of slow you down by a minute here or a minute there, but you do that on each setup, that equates to a good amount of time, and that can set you back. And on the first day, your first days are typically your least efficient days. So, but we did well.
Were you able to review footage as you went along, or at the end of the day, or did you have dailies the next morning?
Early on, but I also don't sleep during production because of nerves. I have dreams about the shoot, so I'll wake up thinking we've shot stuff when we haven't. That was just me dreaming it, and then revisiting the footage when I can is good. But you need to get sleep, and so I did that the first couple nights. But these are long days, and a glass of bourbon, going over footage. I'd also play the movie Sicario, which is one of my big influences for this, before bedtime. Listen to Johan Johansson's score, which is one of my favorites. So yeah, it's like film camp, especially on location like that, and so. Yeah.
What kind of camera did you use, and talk about your sound design and ideas as you were going through it as well?
We used the red Komodo, several of them on some occasion for the head explosion. We had 3 position, and I think we even used my iPhone just as one different angle. But yeah, mostly it was the red, the entire shoot, and then sound stuff. Caesar, who's our post sound guy, he was doing like Foley shit. He went out. He's based in Minnesota. He went out and did some leaf stuff, and him and Mercy's together really crafted the post sound environment, and went way above and beyond to give it that feel, which is really cool.
They told us they needed to know how far our bodies could be pushed.
What did they do to you?
Nothing anyone would believe.
Does Mom know?
We gotta move. She's close. Stay here.
And then Mercy's did the score. He's a talented musician, and I've always said this. And his score, he knew exactly what I wanted. We would do passes on ideas and everything, and the final score is just, yeah.
How were you able to get the house location, and what was it like shooting in there? Did you have any surprises?
I'm trying to think of surprise. I think one of the doors there was an issue, but that house is just there, and we got it for free. And so my, art team set it up, and we kind of had run of the place, and so we were able to use that. The ceilings were extremely low down there, and there were moments where I thought I was going to knock myself out on the ceiling, but yeah, no, it had the right amount of creepy, and then my DPs, and Gaffer were able to light it in such a way to give it that extra mood, and then again the dead bodies in the basement, Mitch and Sebastian, the twins as they called it. That work was great, and with the smoke elements, I think just really added.
Really effective, very effective.
Yeah.
And then the film starts going out towards a meadow, and you have that beautiful meadow shot, and then you're quickly into the woods. Talk to me about the shooting of that, and the film starts to include a third character.
Right, so that's when we get to our Roy character, who has the prosthetics. He's our man who's really suffering from the radiation from the nuclear testing that we hint at.
I told him the story while we were camping one time.
Kind of a scary story to tell a kid, isn't it?
It was supposed to be. I was trying to save him from untoward thoughts of serving God and country. But he didn't even flinch.
And shooting in that spot was the tough part because we were clearly exposed to the elements. It was windy, rainy, and then muddy too in some spots, which I wasn't expecting. And then also the other thing to keep in mind is if the scene's taking place in muddy forest, your crew is also there too, so they're going to move slower too. And then when you have to move from spot to spot, you know, everything slows down just a little bit. And every minute has a butterfly effect for the rest of the shoot. You know, 1 minute here, 2 minutes here, it all adds up, and by the end of the day, you've lost an hour of time you could have used. So that part was tough, and then we had to change blocking. Like there was finding the right spot. And there was a moment there where in my head, I'm like, okay, I had to figure this out because I just didn't know how I wanted them to be blocked given our circumstances in the moment, and it had to change from what I originally thought it was going to be. And so that part was a little overwhelming. But again, as a director, you can't really show that to your crew and your cast, but in your mind, you're like, okay, oh shit, okay, here's what I'm going to do. You know, it's raining, it's muddy, we can use this spot here, you know, this is what I'll do. And I usually go up to my actors and I work it out with them. You know, I feel like you huddle up with your talent and you kind of build this bubble with you and them and the outside world, and then you guys can get to work and execute.
How many setups a day were you able to get through, and how many takes generally were you allowing yourself as you went along?
Probably three to four takes, depending on what the shot was. Some probably less. The amount of setups per day. I know the first day we shot a lot. Day 4, we were doing the truck stuff, so the stuff you see at the beginning, and like, you know, getting a camera, rigging it to that truck, which we also got for free, and had its own like quirk to it to get it started, which is a challenge in and of itself. That had to be figured out on each take. So yeah, like it kind of varied. And one day, the rain was too much, and it was killing our prosthetic on our Roy character, and we had to stop. We lost like an hour or two at the end of the day to finish that, but we knew we had built enough that we could make it up on the next day. And that was kind of a safety, logistical consideration. So it really varied from day to day. Like day 1, we got a lot. I think day 2, less so. Day 3 was great. Day 4, it snowed on us. So we had to deal with that too. So yeah, it was an adventure.
So we just had a location change of our own. Lighting is a little different.
Now.
And that's kind of like filmmaking out in the wild.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
We had to move spots because circumstances changed, and now how we shoot this changes. So we have to adapt on the fly. So we got a nice little soft source here now because we got some cloudy lights, or cloudy sun. So coming in here, but we still have our background.
We do. So let's talk about the headshot scene that vexed you a little bit,
Yes,
but
it did.
that you ended up really adapting really well to the final film.
Yeah, and Mitch and Sebastian like built all the head and like had the brain stuff, and like we had the blood and the air pressure going in for the thing. Like, well, an inspiration was scanners, but I would later learn that they had mentioned too that they kind of do an explosion. You know, it's kind of, you know, that, and that wasn't exactly what I was going for, but it was kind of in that vein. And so he's like, oh, we can do it this way. And so on the day, and we had all the cameras up and everything, and it was super cool. And it worked to a degree, but not 100% in how we wanted the shot to form. And so I had to do a thing where, like, okay, I'll bring in visual effects for this shot, because we were going to have that with the other stuff, with the the radiation in the eyes and everything. But now it's like, okay, we'll do that with this too, and maybe I can have my cake and eat it too by having my practical stuff and just add the digital stuff to enhance what was already there. And yeah, and our VFX guy, Price, he was great. He's like, oh yeah, I can totally do that. You know, I had the elements there, everything was there, and he's like, this is cool, like, no problem. And like me, this is my first foray to visual effects. There are a lot of firsts for me in this movie, like dealing with any sort of stunt like that, squibs, all the blood. I mean, he got more blood on me than one of my characters for one of the shots. And visual effects. These are all first time. So
You mentioned a funny story to me about the aftermath of that shot where you got blood on yourself, and then
yes, there's a squib that one of the squib shots did not go as planned, and it got me and my crew more than in the frame, and so I had blood all over me and my hoodie, and yeah, it looked like I had murdered someone, with a violent blow or something. But it was.
Were you walking through Windsor?
I think I was at one point, and then I realized, I have, and I was wearing a white hood, and so their blood was clearly, it's clearly not ketchup. So yeah, that was funny. Yeah, and again with the practical stuff, like it's a gamble. Like the time to do a reset, really isn't there because we have such an aggressive schedule. So like when we were in the editing room, I think that was one of the debates we had. Was like, okay, we could do this or we could do that. So we could lose this and apply it. There was a way to cut and make that still be in the scene, but just not as graphic as we had intended or how it ended up, as you saw. And so there's a little like just mulling it over of what to do, and then finally, okay, I'm going to consult with some VFX friends, who can better discuss this. And they were highly optimistic and like, no, I think we can do this. We can keep both, and you won't lose the practical stuff. And so I'm like, okay. That will work, and and then at the end of the day, there's the idealized version that you saw like 100%, and sometimes you're just not going to get to that, especially at the indie level, like 90% of the way, like it becomes its own thing. There's the movie in your head, the movie you shoot, and there's the movie you edit. So those are the stages of the process, and that doesn't really change. So like from here to executing, to cutting and editing it together, those are the things, and that's where we were. And so, and again, like, I didn't know how hard it would be in visual. I thought it'd be like, oh, maybe this is impossible. It was not. They're like, it's totally doable. I got you. And they did. And I was like, holy crap, this is great. So,
how satisfied are you with the finished film? What's the response been? Tell me about your time here at HorrOrigins, and where are you going to take it from here?
HorrOrigins is one of the first film festivals it's gotten into, and so that's one reason why I wanted to come out here. I'd heard about this film festival, HorrOrigins, from my friend Jed Shepard, who had been here the previous year. He's like a big filmmaker in the UK, and horror especially, and so I wanted to check it out. And so the response here has been extremely positive. To be honest, like, I have no idea. Sometimes you get to the point where you're like, I don't know what the response will be. Maybe people will see it this way or that way, and so it's been pretty positive, which has been super cool. And finally to see it up on the screen with an audience like that we have here at HorrOrigins was very, very satisfying. And then just talking with people about the movie afterward, that was a first. So that was super cool, and I'm glad I got to do it here in Tucson at HorrOrigins.
What would you advise a novice or young or relatively inexperienced filmmakers that want to do what you've achieved with your short? What are the principal things you would caution them about, and what inspirations would you or advice would you suggest to them?
Well, the cool thing about now is the education about how to do something is at your fingertips. Like, YouTube University is a kind of a real thing. Like, you want to know how to do the head blow up stuff? Just Google it, YouTube it. Someone on there has figured out a way how to do a variation of that. Then take that and put your stuff in it. Like, there's so many tutorials on VFX. I actually did a little bit of the VFX on Hour's Half-Life. Just because I YouTubed the After Effects. I'd never worked in After Effects before. And it was just like a little thing here, like some lens flare stuff and like some smoke here to go with the smoke we had. Just little things like that. And to augment what we already had. And so that would have been possible when I was in school. So I think using those resources, getting to know what you want to accomplish, and plan. Because we don't have money, but we do have time. So there's always a pull in that. And finding like-minded individuals to go on the journey with you. And a rather simple piece of advice is keep it simple. And I say this with the caveat that I don't always do that. Clearly, Honor's Half-Life, I didn't keep it simple. But this is what I wanted to pursue. These were my goals, and I wanted to aspire and reach for something, even in the face of maybe it not turning out. Like, there's no guarantee I finish the movie. There's no guarantee that the movie's half as good as it is. So, having the belief in yourself and the people around you is key. And again, the people around you, it's a people business, so it's not about just the gear. No one gives a shit about the camera you're using. They care about what's in front of the lens. And so that would be a big piece of advice. Don't obsess over gear. People over gear, always, and you'll be better for it. So.
And Robert, where are you headed now? What's your next project? What's your vision for your next year or two?
Okay, so my next project, I have a couple. I have a cosmic horror short that's going to Portland to the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival up there next week. And that's my fun, weird as fuck short movie. I hope I could swear. And then I have a fantasy thriller called God Hunter that I'm in post on. It's basically my version of Children of Men. So my inspiration kind of manifesting itself in that project. I've been writing the feature for that. I'll be editing that short film in the next 6 months. And then writing a no-budget paranormal movie that I plan to do myself with no dollars. No stress in that regard. Just pure audacity of filmmaking.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, a lot of fun, and some sleep.
Yes. Cheers.
Robert, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time and energy. Loved watching your film, and wish the very, very best for you in the future.
Well, thank you so much, and I hope to be back at HorrOrigins again next year and tell everyone about it. So thank you, Rick.